Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Brand Innovators Livecast series. My name is Diana Dilworth, and I'm the managing editor here at Brand Innovators. Welcome to today's International Livecast, Digital Innovation. Today, we will be joined by marketing leaders from Nestle, Ziggo, Vodafone, Sense, and many more. Please be sure to ask questions and use the chat to engage with both our speakers and attendees. Our first session today is with Hessel Bochma, digital marketer at Ziggo Vodafone, and will be moderated by Murray Phillipson, Vice President, EMEA Demand Partnership at Smart Ad Server. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Hessel and Murray.
Hi there.
Hi, Murray, how are you? Welcome.
I'm very good, thank you.
Wow, you're ready for takeoff.
I am. I think I'm on a different. Let me just sort out my my background a little bit.
It's quite inspiring, actually, for the
I think
in the current. I know NASA's doing all this research. And hi, Hessel, how are you?
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Thank you. So look, I'll tell you what. I'll work that out in the background. But fantastic to be here today.
Wonderful to have you both. I look forward to the conversation.
Excellent. Excellent. Hi there. Hi there. So let's start. So thank you very much for everybody who's joining us today. We're here on another Brand Innovators event. I'm very excited to be here. And today we're going to take a little look to discuss around some of the aspects of digital innovation. Obviously, it's happening everywhere at all times, and frankly, from a personal point of view, I find it really, really hard to keep up with what's going on. So luckily, we have Hessel, who he's done a runner. We have Hessel here, who is an expert in the area and who can help us navigate that a little bit further. So hopefully, it's going to be useful. Just to give you a little bit of background, so I'm Murray Phillipson. I work for Smart. Smart is, for those who don't know, Smart is a supply-side platform, an SSP, which connects the sort of the programmatic digital world of advertisers and agencies with their target audiences across all connected devices and formats. And again, and Smart is a French company which has evolved from that market. Now is across all of EMEA, with offices in North America, South America, and growing in Southeast Asia. But enough about me. Let's say hello to Hessel. Hi, how are you doing?
I think we might be having just a bit of an audio issue, so we'll give Hessel a minute to get settled. And Murray, where are you calling in from?
Oh, I'm calling from London.
Oh, okay.
Or outer space.
Or outer space. I was gonna say. I'm in Switzerland, and it's very sunny and beautiful here, and I hope it's the same in London. I know. Yeah,
exactly. It's funny when you talk about this as a sort of a fireside chat. That's the last thing I want. It was so hot here.
Right. Exactly. I think that comes from our ski summits and things where we, love gathering around the fire and talking and learning new things.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. How are we getting on there with the sound? Okay.
Okay.
This is called digital innovation. That's what happens.
Right. All of these tools that we have, and we're still definitely.
I know. It happens all the time.
I know, exactly. And how many meetings have you started where you're on mute and you've got this idea? Everyone says, start over, you're on mute.
It's the way of life.
Exactly.
Yes, I'm so sorry, I'm in.
Hi.
Hi, Hessel.
Hi, how are you doing?
Sorry. I'm fine, thank you.
Good.
Sorry for the delay.
That's okay. That's okay. So I don't know what you've heard, but I sort of introed me and then went to intro you. So let's start with you, shall we?
Thank you, Mary.
Just tell us, Hazel. Thank you so much for being part of this, and tell us a little bit about yourself, a little about your role, and then obviously a little bit more around Vodafone Vigo.
Yes, thank you, Mary. Let me start off with some company info. I work at Vodafone Vigo. Vodafone Vigo is a Dutch-based company in Holland. It's a 50-50 joint venture of Vodafone Group and subsidiary of Liberty Global. It's called Ziggo. And we are now a joint venture for 3 years now. And we are quite successful in the last 3 years, especially last year. And my role is I'm working at the B2B marketing department as a product owner of a special niche website. It's a special website for our B2B business partners. And through this website, I can tell you later more about this, we sell, support, and all kinds of products and services to our business partners.
Cool. Thank you. And how long have you been there?
For over 14 years, Murray, so that's a lifetime. Eh?
That is, yeah, that's good. That's staying power.
Yeah.
You must have seen a lot of innovation in that time.
Yeah, we come to that later about innovation, because not every day is an innovation day. Yeah?
No. Okay, so listen. So we've just got a couple of questions, really, just sort of to help base our discussion. Really, I just want to sort of kick off. I mean, at the end of the day, when you say digital innovation, everywhere we look, it's going on, and obviously there's some very specific areas that pertain certainly to my part of the marketing business. But I was just wondering, how do you define digital innovation within Vodafone Ziggo? Obviously, it's a unique offering that you're bringing to the market, and how does that look like across your brands?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Murray. The thin line between just an improvement or an innovation, that's I don't think we can discuss that today. But when I see at our business, especially in the telco business, because we are in the telco business, mobile and fixed lines and cable, we're also a cable operator. And on the big scale, on the large scale, we mainly innovate on, for example, 5G or Internet of Things. Yes, we mainly innovate on the main themes within our business. For example, 5G.
Oh, yes.
Or IoT or Internet of Things, and these are our mainstream innovations. But below that, we have several other innovations, like we are speaking about today. These are innovations on another scale with another impact.
How? Sorry, you're going to say?
No.
I was just wondering how many people, when you across the business, how many people are involved in what we know, if we're going to class this as digital innovation, how many people get involved on the product development side?
Yeah, we have. That's also a question who is difficult to answer, because not only the product development department is improving, but there are also other departments who are improving on their processes or on back office things or So solely the product development department, I think it's a department of 100 people of the 8,000 people we employ.
Wow. Is that all in the Netherlands?
How do you mean, Murray?
Are they all based in the Netherlands?
Oh yeah, so, I'm sorry. Yes, we are mainly a Dutch-based company, but as we have two mothers, one Vodafone Group, who is headquarters in the UK, and Liberty Global, who is operating from the US, but has also offices in Europe. We have a lot of innovation also coming from the mother company. Okay.
So so let's get into the specifics of some of this. I know that you've mentioned that you'd been working on an API for your business partners. Could you and obviously bringing that to market. Could you tell us a little bit more about that and the work that's gone into it, what it does, and how you think that's going to affect or improve your customer base?
Yes, thank you. So this in our business, or in my line of business, it's the business of we're doing business with business partners. They are sort of resellers, but then high end, and they are in the B2B domain, and they provide all kinds of high end solutions to our customers, like mobile subscription, smart working solutions, SD-WAN solutions, connectivity, security solutions, Internet of Things, all kinds of products. You can mention the whole bunch, but especially for partners who are selling our cable offer, and we are also in the cable business. We had a lot of business partners who ordered these cable access via our website. It's my website, and they did order these cable access via an old school web form. And at one instant, it was in September or October 2019. I was one of our partner account managers reached out to me, and he said, "Okay, I'm talking to our business partners on day-to-day business, and they really want to accelerate the business, and they need another way to order these cable access products." So he said, "Maybe you can think of an API." So we discussed with the partners and with our vendor how to build an API, and within 2 months we developed this API and put this API live. So that was in December 2019, and now after more than a year, we have successfully rolled out this API towards all our partners who embrace this API tremendously. And now we do 80 or 90% of our business for this particular product is going through this API funnel. So this was quite a success, you could say.
Yeah. So are there plans to apply that same methodology to other products?
Yeah, we are. We just last week launched the second API for another product, and I hope we can also within a few months launch the third API. So we have a whole suite of APIs for ordering several kinds of products. So this has become a successful model, especially to engage with our business partners who have their own systems and don't want to order into our systems.
Yeah. Has there been, okay, that was my next question actually. Has there been any pushback? Has then people gone, we like the old way?
Well, we still have the old way. So We have so they can order still in the old way is still alive and kicking, but the volumes are decreasing rapidly. So we have to see if we have to maintain this. How long we have to maintain this old way of doing business, but for now it's no problem.
Cool. And has there been any other sort of like the problem thing about innovation is it sometimes solves one problem but creates another, and you don't know that until it goes live and you start to see it at scale. Has there been any part of this which you'd have said, oh, we should have done things differently?
Yes, that's certainly. In this case, when you introduce an API, the other party, the third party, who is on the end of the line, has to anticipate also on the changes we do on the API. Yeah. So we have to plan much more in advance our planned changes. And when we're going to change something or something big or something small, it depends. We have to plan this upfront. And in the old days, we could change anything at any moment. But now that's when our systems are integrated in this way, with this high integration rate, we have to communicate about this. We have all kinds of protocols about this. We have made also a release calendar so that our partners can also anticipate on these changes. And moreover, not only the planning is an issue and the communication about this, also the whole communication around the working of the API, because the whole the way of working together is more intense, because they have to know how is this API operating, how do I use it, what is the business ruling of the API, etc., etc. And so we have a lot of knowledge, and we have to transfer to our partners in this case.
So it's getting two businesses aligned, and I suppose to some degree it brings businesses closer together because they have to be aligned.
Yes, certainly, yes. They are in that sense, they are coming into our domain of all the changes we want to do, and the other way around. They can also issue wishes to our side, so that we can embrace their wishes into our stack.
Sure. Okay, that's really interesting, because obviously, again, we're trying to, I think the whole much of the industry moves to, there are lots of innovations, lots of things that save time, but then systems don't quite talk to each other, and you see bottlenecks if the workflow hasn't been completely worked out, and obviously that can. It feels like innovation, but sometimes it feels like you're going backwards. But that's.
Yeah, okay. That's also a very good remark, Murray. The workflow has to come at the same pace, and the altering workflow has also come with the same pace as the changes of the API. So that's a whole package of things we have to do every time we are thinking of a change or bug fixing or whatever.
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah. So this came so you launched this in late 2019. Obviously, the world's changed a little bit since then. I was wondering, have you had to adapt anything with regard to how, I don't know, either with your customers or ultimately the audience that your customers are servicing, now that obviously the pandemic's here and more people going online? I mean, I don't know. Have you seen changes?
Yes, of course. I think it's the same for you in the UK as here on the European mainland.
Yeah.
And then we talk about the whole societal impact of the Corona pandemic, and especially for our business in the telecommunications. The ask from the customers has been massive, considering connectivity, internet connections, telephony. But also working together. We shifted massively with our company, this company-wide, to this smarter working strategy, you can say, in which we try to facilitate the new way of working for our customers, especially the B2B customers and people who are working at home and want to collaborate and with their colleagues or with their vendors or clients or whatever from home. So it's our business, but not our business. I think the whole society as a whole, and this has a major impact. I think also not only technique, but also in the day-to-day life of you, me, and all the people around in the chat. And I saw you this morning in your nice kitchen, Murray. So, and this moment now, because it's so hot outside, I'm sitting downstairs. That's. And otherwise, I would have been at the office.
Yeah. I can say from my point, I think I reached sort of peak family relationship time about August last year. So I'm quite looking forward to going back to work. So tell me a little bit. So as the world, hopefully, fingers crossed, vaccinations, the variants, we start to get things under control. Do you see, as the world sort of reopens, do you see, from your business point of view, a shift back to where things before, or do you expecting that actually the way you've set up now and the way that people interacting with your products will stay as is today?
Yeah, we think, and not only we think, I think it's a common understanding that that we won't go back to the old way of working. This is here to stay, and the altered way of working, working at home or at different places, working remote. So I think this is a massive change in how we work, and
But I suppose as a telecoms provider, I mean, you must be, very close to the actual numbers or changes that you can see in behavior, or potentially see the changes of behaviors through. Obviously, you're providing a service, and that way that service is used is, you're closer to it than I think anybody else is. Seen societal changes.
Yes, that's correct, and especially for us as Vodafone we tend also to stay close to our customers. For the residential customers, so the private customers also, and the B2B customers also, and especially again when I see what impact this new way of working has on people's life, on domestic life also. So you bring your home into your work into your home. That's sometimes very intrusive. I've heard some friends of mine who had really some arguments between the spouses about that. I can imagine. I can imagine that it's sometimes very, very difficult, especially when you are you have not a big house and you have a big family, etc., etc. So I think that this will be more of impact than the business of the effect it will have on our business solely.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering, coming a little bit back to the sort of the you put in place a new structure, new buying structure, ordering structure, and everything like that, and obviously that's good. How do you? I just wondered, how do you? Because every innovation is unique on its own, and then also a bit of an unknown when it gets going. How do you sort of measure success? How do you say, okay, there's a goal, obviously, and the goal can be myriad, the types of goals that you ultimately want. But how, when it comes to a specific type of innovation like the API and ordering structure, how do you measure success? How do you step back and say, yes, that has achieved?
Yeah, in this case, we have maybe some the way we measured it was for example the acceptance rate of the API of the partners, and will they use it, the usage rate, the volume it's used, the frequency. We have also some KPIs on uptime, response time, and in the end, one thing was important is it going to give us more revenues and therefore turnover? And it has. So on all items we can put a green, how do you call it, sign. It was landed very well at our partners, and usage was immediately flawless and on a high level with high volumes. So and can I mention one downside? One downside of this is, for example, what I mentioned before, that we had to alter our way of working when we are doing changes, etc., etc. And because of the fact, if we are not acting and planning this, anticipating on this upfront, then our partners will be now maybe for some days out of business, and that's a very pitiful event.
Yeah, absolutely. So with so okay, on this scenario, you hit your benchmarks as you went along, and you ticked the boxes. Good. What did you have a framework where you were saying, okay, well, if we reach this, it's good, but if we don't reach this, listen, we're going to have to rethink and roll back, and was there a structure in which you could stop at key points? Yeah, we have no specific fallback scenario, because the old way of working was still working and is still working. So, but especially for the API, in the case it was not used as wanted, when the usage rate was dropping, and I don't think it was a real big problem, because we started just as we work Scrum Agile, we just try to innovate, and in this case the business partner asked for this feature, so I didn't quite think it would not be a success. So we have, I think, a good feeling of what is playing in the market and what our business partners want to have for features, etc., etc. The only thing we have to do is to grab these ideas, to understand really their ideas and their wishes,
and to implement the solutions as good as possible and as fast as possible. So that's the main challenge here, I think.
Okay. Okay. So so what's next?
Yeah, next, as I told you, we are just last week we deployed a second one, and within a few weeks, I hope we deploy the third one. So that will be for now. I think that we have to stabilize all these streams to get grip on this, and we don't only have this stream of orders, but we also have reporting on this, payments, etc. So we have to make the processes work from A to Z.
Sure.
So I think this year will be full of making all these streams mature.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think we have any questions at the moment. No, we don't. I've just checked the little inbox, and I just wondered if it just sort of broadened the. Oh, hang on a second. 1 second. Let me have a little note here. What's this? Okay, here we got a question. Here we go. Sorry. Are you adjusting your marketing and sort of digital transformation initiatives or investments over the next couple of years based on based on where we are at the moment, sort of 2020?
Can you rephrase the question, Maria?
Yeah. Are you changing,
adjusting our?
Yeah, your marketing and based on your digital transformation initiatives. Are you changing the way you're sort of communicating with your customer base based on how the market is changing, and certainly how with regard to how some of these innovations are working?
Yes, in general terms, I really think that this is going to happen, and especially when you see that the whole society is transforming to a more higher digital level, but also usage of more advanced communications tooling, collaboration tooling. So it's undoubtedly that we will alter our communications on that, especially as a telco company.
Yeah, of course. And how involved do you get in that? How involved do you get with the direction of change of communication? Sorry, how much do you, in your particular role, are you more focused on making the product work harder? Work better?
Yeah, in this case, especially for our business, I'm facilitating the B2B business partners, so it's not on consumer level. So
sure.
I think also our part will also change, also B2B partners will get on another level. And also, like this example I gave you, like the API, it's a different way of not communicating, but for transferring data. And so yeah, this will be. We now work with platforms, etc. So this is a whole new ecosystem we also access. And that is also a different ballgame.
Yeah. Yes, I can imagine. I mean, certainly, just sort of pulling in a little bit of my world into this. At the end of the day, there's innovations, because obviously there's some big changes with regard to marketing. Is going to be digital marketing, should I say? Is going to be communicated with cookies going away, and how people get identified. This is more consumer-led rather than B2B. But I'm always curious to think how. I don't often get the chance to talk to a telecoms person, so within that, within that, I just wondered, the telecoms world sits on huge amounts of data, on consumer data, and there've been plans in the past to try and, let's just say, broaden that out for marketing purposes. I just wondered, obviously it all has to be consented and it all has to be GDPR compliant, and it may not be the area for you, but I just wondered how a company like Vodafone Vigo sort of like works within looks to develop their relationship with customers, but of course still has to sit within GDPR and privacy frameworks, and looks to sort of extend that data in the marketing sphere. And it maybe this is just not a question for you, but I mean it's always curious for me.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So you said already we are bound to the GDPR regulations, etc., privacy. So and I speak from I can speak from my heart. We are not abusing this data. I know this quite. No, but so yeah, we always. If we want to use data from customers, we just ask them like any other company. One thing we can do is, of course, is the use this data stratified, or how do you call it, when it's anonymous.
Yeah.
So we can do that, but no personal data. We use no personal data for our customers.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi there. You've joined us again.
Hi, yes, thank you, Marie and Hessel. It's really fascinating, so interesting. As you talked about, as we kind of go back into the office and back into the world, what will things look like in this kind of new hybrid world? And it will be fascinating to see. I'm curious, in 6 months from now, when we're all kind of back on the stage, what our new observations will be. But I want to thank you both so much for your contributions, and it was wonderful having you.
Great. Pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you both.
Thank you, Diana.
Thank you, Hessel. Thank you, Marie. Bye.
All right. Marie, thank you.
Thank you. So next, I would like to welcome to the stage Simon Kadeo-Lulin, who is the Retention and Loyalty Manager at Sense, which is a retail website helping design kind of where you can shop and finding fashion. So please join me in welcoming Simon to the stage. Hey, Simon.
Hey, Diana, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Nice to see you.
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
Absolutely. So I guess if you just want to get started by telling us a little bit about yourself and your role and where you're kind of sitting right now.
Of course. So I work at Essence, which is a Montreal-based company where we are basically a multi-brand luxury store that is primarily online, where we're selling Gucci, Saint Laurent brands along that line. We recently did our very first funding at over 5 billion. Canadian dollars. So that's really exciting. I've been with the company for almost 7 years. Initially, I was working in email marketing. So I was leading that initiative. But then now I'm more towards customer retention and loyalty. And I would say more recently, so around January, I'm also taking on a larger role in personalization within the company. So that's, I guess, like that's the high level view of what I'm doing at Essence, but I'm sure we're going to get deeper into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the setup. So tell me about the how loyalty marketing has changed over the past year, and do you think changing consumer behaviors during the pandemic has impacted loyalty?
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe something to say first is that we're a B2C business. So obviously we're going directly to the customer, and we definitely saw some important changes in customer behavior. Obviously, one of the things that we're noticing, and I'm sure other companies are noticing it as well, it's a general trend in the market. There's a greater online adoption. So, and I think that's here to stay. It's more of a acceleration in online adoption. So I would say that that's a trend that is here to stay. So we definitely saw that in our numbers. And then I would say there's some more micro changes that we're seeing within the customer expectations. So for instance, we saw some changes in like return behavior. So we have obviously like return policies, and we're seeing that some customers are I guess like interacting a little bit differently since the pandemic. And those are things that we're not sure yet how it's going to evolve in time. But I guess our role, in retention and loyalty is truly to kind of understand what is the like new customer needs and how we can address those. So I would say like at a high level, that's really what has changed, and we're very, I guess, like aware and trying to like basically like listen very closely to what the customer is telling us, either like explicitly or within their behavior, and adjust to it.
Absolutely. And so now that we've been focusing on this more with personalization over the last year, I imagine things have changed, when people were at home and not, buying more casual clothing versus, maybe an expensive pair of Prada shoes or something like that. When they're not even really wearing shoes and not going to the office. And then now as offices begin to reopen, and it's like everybody wants to have their great new look. So can you tell me a little bit about like this shift in behavior and what you guys observed in your site?
Yeah, obviously. So yes, there were definitely some style changes. So that's something that we noticed. I think that's fair to say that like the loungewear has been performing quite well compared to other more traditional styles like suits or dresses. I think, like speaking personally, I feel like Essence was already very well positioned in that market. So we have a little bit of a younger demographic compared to some of our some other people within the space. And I feel like that played in our favor during the pandemic. So yes, we did see a shift in the types of products that were being purchased, but we're already obviously thinking what will be the need in the up and coming season. And as you may know, in fashion, like the cycle is like very long in advance. So especially in luxury, so the buy has to happen way before we actually receive the stock. So we obviously think ahead and try to forecast and estimate what the customer will want, in the future.
And so how has that changed since the pandemic? You said that you were well positioned though, because people were already buying loungewear even before the pandemic?
That's correct. So maybe being a little bit more explicit, I try to to keep some cards close to my vest, but yeah, in reality, like yes, there's a shift in like loungewear definitely, and then a little bit less performance in formal wear. And I think in terms of the categories moving forward, we don't anticipate, or that's more my personal opinion, but I don't think we're going to observe a shift towards the more formal categories again. But I think within the same categories, we're going to see a different type of aesthetic. So I know like typically, and I guess like historically, that has been proven that, like in recession or hard times, there's more of a style shift towards something that is a little bit more minimalist. And then when the economy is doing well, when there's a war is over, etc., it tends to like go towards more of a extravagant and maximalist type of aesthetic. So that's kind of what I'm anticipating. Like people are gonna want to party, go out. So I mean, my personal feeling is that there's going to be a lot of extravagance in the styles in the next couple of years.
Interesting. That makes a lot of sense as people are kind of feeling the connection of going out in the world again.
Exactly.
Yeah. So with this, you brought in, I imagine already being positioned with a loungewear instead of some retailers that were trying to catch up and appeal to people. Did you draw in new customers? And then now, how are you trying to keep these customers? Obviously, with loyalty being in your title, what kinds of digital innovations are you using to, build loyalty among these new people that you've brought in?
That's a great question. So definitely, we keep seeing a healthy amount of acquisition. And for us, I guess the formula hasn't changed pre-pandemic or post-pandemic. Like, I think the success is kind of like remaining the same, which is, to me, kind of I guess three pillars. The first one would be to leverage data. So making sure that we have a strong understanding of the customer, having some good predictive model to kind of like forecast what will be the customer behavior, identifying the areas where a customer might drop off, kind of like the knots where a customer might be dissatisfied or satisfied and then come back. So to me, those are the main elements from a pure retention standpoint. But then from what I would call like a loyalty standpoint, so I guess things that cannot be necessarily offered to the entire population, but that are relevant for maybe a subgroup of the population. I would say that there's, maybe I didn't make myself clear. Anyways, there's I guess like some investment in I guess providing differentiation in the experience. So if you are a customer that we feel you're going to react positively to certain stimulus, then like how can we provide that to you? I guess that's the winded answer.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes so much sense. And I know before you were talking about the role of personalization. Can you talk about how you are using personalization to really deepen the engagement with consumers?
Of course. Yeah, I think right now the way we are thinking about personalization is, so just to give a sense of like the catalog that we have tens of thousands of products. And we know that the average page per session is not 1,000. It's a couple of pages per session. So how do we make sure to provide the right product to the right individual? That is like truly like one of the main focus for me anyways, is to, I guess, funnel the right product to the individual. So that to me is the most important thing. And then the second point I would say is probably personalization in communication. So trying to exactly, like to reach the individual and have a message that would resonate specifically to that individual. Those are, I would say, are the two main personalization blocks that we're double clicking on in this year.
Mm-hmm. And you're looking at their browse behavior and their purchase behavior, and then are you modeling this against what similar customers have done?
Yes, so maybe I should go a little bit deeper into that. So yes, we are basically tracking any browsing behavior, purchasing behavior, any additional data that we might be able to inject at scale within our model, and we're basically creating models in order to create a relevant personalization for customers. And the way we improve on those, I guess, personalization algorithm is by doing split tests. So we're gonna try maybe an algorithm and then pin it against another algorithm with some either like new information or slightly adjusted algorithm, and then see which one performs best.
Mm-hmm. So lots of testing and learning.
Yes, exactly.
Uh-huh. And then talk about your media. Has it changed since the pandemic? And if so, how? And what are your main channels to reaching your customers?
Yes, I would say that the mix of channel hasn't changed that much. I would say it stays the same. I would say that for me, like being in email marketing for a long time, I have a specific bias for email marketing, and I think in general, just like own media is very powerful. So I would say like I have a little bit of a preference there, and we obviously have a better sense of who the customer is. So that allows us to be a little bit more refined, I guess, when we're contacting customers. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So email would be primary. Are you also doing search or social media? And what does that look like? Do you take learnings from email and apply it to, or take searched keywords and put them in your emails, or put things that are performing well in email into your social media? How are you mixing that up?
That's a great point. So I'm a little bit removed from that world now, but I would say that definitely like there's synergy between the different teams. And a lot of collaboration regarding like campaigns and making sure that we're aligned in terms of messaging, in terms of copy. So yes, absolutely. Like that's definitely something that we're very conscious about. And I would say also there's I guess like a desire to propose the content that is right for the channel. So we see that there's maybe certain messages that we could provide in multiple channels, but it might not be it might not be the best for all channels, if that makes sense. So maybe if we want something that is a little bit more reactive, or that should trigger something that is more immediate, then obviously we're going to use push notifications versus email marketing, where we know that the open rate can span over like a longer period of time. So obviously like that's something that we're thinking about.
That's interesting. And is there an approach that you take? Are you doing more product-driven, transactional-based sales, where you're really trying to, sell a pair of shoes or loungewear, or are you also taking a content point of view where you're just telling a story and not really pushing sales or product, or are you doing both?
I would say we're doing both. So I guess like the main. I would say obviously like the main part of my job is geared towards sales. So we're trying to take more of a sell approach, but we do have a marketing team that focuses really on creating a story. And I guess like, so maybe to give a little bit of context, like, so we're selling like, $600 hoodies, $1,000 pants. So like, my perspective is that like no one actually needs, from like a functional standpoint, those products. Like there's no need to have those items. So we need to create something that has some meaning to the individual, something that is something where you can justify paying that price. So obviously there's a lot of storytelling and marketing associated with the products, and try to I guess give a lot of context to the products themselves.
I know with luxury products, because the craftsmanship that goes into it, there's more sustainability, or at least the option to be more sustainable. Is this important to your customer base, and are you telling this story?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the direction that we're going to see in the industry, obviously, is going towards, I guess, industries in general that are more sustainable. I feel like that's something that we're trying to promote more and more. The brands that have a specific, I guess, angle towards sustainability, we try to mention it. And I think moving forward, there's going to be more and more of that.
It's definitely. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say that also we have a younger demographic, and I think that's something that is top of mind for that generation. And also that's something that we're seeing, I think in general in customer feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, we're seeing that with a lot of brands we're talking to. The consumers are really demanding to spend their money with places that are giving them the choice to be more sustainable. So you were talking about working with the different marketing departments and people, and I'm curious if things have changed since you've been, working from home versus when you were in the office. Like, has it been harder, or have you been managing it well to talk to the email team, the social team, the search team, and the overall marketing function? Like, how have you guys adapted, and will you go back to in person, and what will that look like?
So again, like I think I have like my personal view. I think that overall it went quite well. So the company itself is a younger demographic. So like the individuals working in the company. So I would say that everyone was very tech savvy and didn't have too many issues to transition towards I guess like remote work. And I think overall it went well, and maybe some people were skeptical at first on like how it's going to work. Like I think everyone was a little bit scared, or it was the uncertainty. We didn't know what it would look like. But I think so I haven't been back to the office since March 2020, so it's been a really long time. And I would say that now with that time away, I feel like everyone feel like they're very functional and that there's some pleasure in working remotely. So I don't anticipate a full return to the office. We haven't heard like the final decision, but my personal view is that I feel like it might be a partial return to work, or something that allows for more flexibility than before.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Can you, going back to this question of loyalty, what are some of the ways that you make, if I'm a customer in Essence, how will you earn my loyalty, and what benefits do I get by being a loyal customer? How do I feel that you're taking extra care of me versus just someone that, found you through a search?
That's a great question. So, when I started, we didn't have basically any differentiation in the experience. So, like you said, like regardless if you were a great customer or someone that just started, it was basically the same experience. And obviously, we know that customers are different; they have different needs, and there are certain things that you can allow yourself to offer to top customers because it makes sense from a return on investment standpoint, where it wouldn't necessarily make sense for other customers. So what we've done, we've, I guess, identify a lot of elements that would be beneficial for the customers that are not necessarily some things that we can offer at the entire population. And we've gone through a very thorough testing process to see, are we indeed generating value for the business? And obviously, like if we're generating value for the business, it means that it's generating value for the customer. So we did that. We identified the ones that were working well, the ones that maybe weren't working that well, and now we have a very strong portfolio of different things that can be offered to customers. And I guess maybe it goes into like the second half of 2021, but I think now what we're trying to see is there benefits in packaging those very exclusive things and providing visibility to customers on how they can get it. Because so far it has been more of a surprise and delight approach where we're offering things kind of as a surprise. And that has a lot of benefit because you can, I guess, be, you can provide certain things to customer, and if it doesn't work out, you can always retract it or scale it. But now that we have like a strong understanding of what works, what doesn't, there's a benefit to sharing a little bit more with the customers on how they can get certain things. And that we are hoping will affect their, I guess, their behavior in order to to get those certain things.
Absolutely. That makes so much sense. What kinds of KPIs are you using to measure the success of loyalty programs?
Yeah, so I saw within the preparation session, and you said like other than sales, and obviously like sales for us is the number one driver. However, I think we're trying to be even more sophisticated than that in looking at an even deeper level. So like a CM, for instance, contribution margin, just to get a like a more realistic picture of, you know, if we're selling an item at full price, we're going to make a greater margin than if we're selling an item at a discount, for instance, even if it's the overall same sale. So that's something that we're looking into. And then obviously per project, we would have specific KPIs that would indicate the success of an initiative. So, you know, if we're doing, let's say like personalization at, you know, checkout or at shopping bag, we're going to see like, okay, are we, you know, are we generating more than maybe some of the drop off that we might generate with this project? So we're always monitoring multiple KPIs that typically are specific to unique projects, and obviously we'll always supplement that with I guess customer feedback. So one of the things that I regret the most about the office is being close to the CX team, because I feel like you have an immediate feedback of like what the customers are thinking. Like if you see people kind of running around answering the same questions, like, you know, that maybe there's room for improvement on certain things. So I would say that also like taking into consideration qualitative feedback is super important.
Mm-hmm. That makes so much sense. What do you see as the biggest future challenge to retail and e-commerce, and what's the biggest opportunity?
Yeah, so I think in terms of the short, medium term, I would say, and it might be kind of obvious, but I would say competition. I feel like there's going to be an increase, like an increased amount of competition in the e-commerce space, and that's mainly because now commerce is basically e-commerce. It's basically the same. Like we've accelerated e-commerce drastically with the pandemic, and I think it's going to continue to go in that direction. So a lot of, I guess, physical store are now mainly online, and I would say there's a lot of competition. So like maybe there are certain things that you could get only in your city or in your area. Now there's a lot of the same products internationally, and you can get it from different places. So to me, competition is going to be very challenging moving forward. And I guess like it ties into the opportunity. And for me, the only way to break competition is through differentiation. So you need to find ways to be different than what the competition is doing. We know from like a specific like e-commerce lens, best practices are established at this point, and there's a lot of websites and that are resembling themselves. So like how do we make it different, similar to like a store where you can kind of like express the brand through the store? How can we do that online? So I would say biggest challenge, definitely competition, and then opportunity, I would say differentiation.
What kinds of advances in technology do you think would help with this differentiation?
So I have to say personalization. So definitely, I think leveraging personalization is going to be key. But I think, like, I still think that a lot of the differentiation can happen in like the things that cannot be like done by a robot. So like branding, storytelling, putting things in context. Like I feel like that that is something that that will ultimately, I think, do the differentiation, versus, I guess, leveraging technology. Of course, like, there's a limit to that. So like, if you're drastically better in terms of like actual customer needs, so like if you're better in every way in terms of fulfillment, or you have a greater product assortment, then I think you're ultimately gonna win. But if we assume that everyone has great fulfillment, everyone has great products, then what is the differentiation? I feel like the differentiation is going to be through branding and marketing and personalization.
Absolutely. And I like what you're talking about, as you said before, you have 10,000 SKUs and people look at 3 or 4 pages when they're on the site. So obviously part of that will be probably translating all of these amazing, great products and letting people know that you have them through this kind of curation. What kinds of, are you doing things with influencer marketing or trying to, curate?
To be honest, I'm not 100% sure what's our level of involvement regarding influencers. I certainly think that there's some investment in that, but I wouldn't say that it's the core of our business.
Mm-hmm. But what I was going to say is the site navigation on Essence is actually quite sophisticated, and the design is very sleek. And so you go there and it feels very modern and very much like, okay, I'm in this world. It's like going into a cool store almost, where, you just know, like you're visiting London or something and you want to like hit up that one shop because of the experience. Can you talk about like this experience that people get as they go through your site, and how that can help be a differentiator?
Sure, absolutely. I think that it's in a lot of the details. So I think, the design team is obviously like really good in trying to like maintain a very very specific aesthetic. So, and we can see it throughout like basically every single touch point regarding it's on the website or in store or in email marketing. Like, we're, I guess, being very diligent in the way we're presenting things. So, and you can, again, like you can see it in like the design of the pages, but also in the styling of the models. I would say like there's consistency across. Same thing for our copywriting. You can see that it's very I guess unified across channel, and that we have really like I guess like a well developed like tone of voice. Yeah, I would say like that's definitely something like when you go on Essence that you're going to be experiencing. And I would say like in addition to that, I think like our home page right now, for instance, is very content driven. So a lot of, I guess, people in this space have more commercial fronts or home pages where they're trying to push products, whereas our own homepage is mainly content driven, where we're talking about all sorts of things that we feel is relevant to the individual that is shopping at Essence. And typically we take a very forward thinking approach. So, and it can be regarding like culture, art, fashion. Like we're not discriminating in terms of topics that we're talking about. And we have also like a very high frequency as well in terms of production compared to maybe other people in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the user experience is that it's almost like you're in a digital magazine or something going through, as you said, with photo shoots, because it's not just a product shot of like picture of a pair of shoes, add to cart kind of thing. It's quite the opposite. It's whereas something like an Amazon is really just functional and you just see the picture, you add it to your cart, but it's not very, beautiful or engaging. In that sense, it just serves a function. You're at the other end of the scale. And is that because it's like luxury goods and you're really trying to engage customers with the luxury experience?
Absolutely, it's great that you're using Amazon, because for me, the Amazon view is like you said, like very functional. it's not, pleasant to the eye. Even if you shop through it a lot, like it's not super aesthetic. Whereas like on our end, I think there's a desire to make things, functional, where customers can find the products that they're looking for. But we also want to respect a certain aesthetic and make it feel like we're not, crowding the I guess the visual space with things that are with all sorts of like buttons and things along those lines.
Right. As you said before, you're trying to sell $1,000 pair of pants. People don't really need that, so you have to guide them to why.
Exactly. I think that's exactly it. Like there's a very small portion of that $600 that can be explained by the function. The rest is just like a higher need that we need to make sure is satisfied.
Absolutely. So what are your plans for the next 6 months, and how do you anticipate retail and e-commerce shifting as the world reopens?
So for us, I guess like the next 6 months on my end anyways is mainly geared towards scaling some of the things that we're doing in the first half of 2021. So I think everything regarding loyalty, like I think we are in a good space, and right now it's about scaling some of the initiatives that were successful earlier in the year. And for personalization, I believe that we need to continue moving forward in, I guess, injecting a little bit more personalization. So maybe it's not as matured as as what we have in terms of loyalty. So I would say injecting more personalization, more touch points, more areas where we can have, I guess, personalization blocks. And then eventually it's going to be about refinement. But I feel like, as you know, like there's like as you're becoming like more and more sophisticated in like a certain area, the marginal benefit is decreasing. And so for us right now, we're mainly about like getting that first initial lift through personalization versus trying to like grab the small increments in improving the things that we are already doing, if that makes sense.
Right. Absolutely. So as you think about things, I know you guys are based in Montreal, but like you operate globally. Can you talk about how you market differently to different markets, or is that something you're scaling up to, and what the challenges and opportunities are there?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So we do have like a internationalization team that is looking into ways like how can we I guess adjust the marketing, or even certain things that are specific to certain markets. So definitely the internationalization team is looking into that, and I think part of the recent funding that was done by Sequoia, I believe, is towards investing more into China. So that's definitely something that is going to be very interesting to look into moving forward.
Absolutely. I know that in China, this big thing is these shopping holidays, and creating these events around, this shopping holiday, whether it's in summer or around the holidays, and just doing these online things, and also kind of buying things almost like a QVC style. I know it's quite different there, but just this, in 24 hours, you're doing kind of a marathon and selling a lot. So that's an interesting opportunity.
Yeah, I would say that it's like we can think that there's a globalization in English. Sorry, I was going to say mondialisation in French. So globalization, there's a little bit of like I guess more common behavior than ever before, but still there's some very important differences between countries. and you simply need to be aware of them if you want to do a good job at penetrating those markets. So definitely, like, there needs to be some sort of adjustment in the way we're presenting things to customers to make it relevant and appealing to them.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, I know, like, here in the European market, there's so many different languages and just cultural nuances that by tapping into those or having an awareness and sympathetic point of view to that, you probably can adapt and appeal to more customers.
Absolutely. Yeah, completely agree with that.
Excellent. So I think we'll turn it over to the audience questions now. We have one that just came in, and it's just, can you give an example of a campaign that you ran that was successful, and why do you think it was successful?
Sure. I don't want to reveal too much, but I think maybe something that I think was very successful is something that I mentioned a little bit earlier in the discussion regarding moving from, I guess, surprise and delight perk allocation to something that is a little bit more transparent to the customer. So we did a campaign on that earlier this year, and that was extremely successful. So it was like through an A/B split test where, again, through the support of data science, we've established like a test and control group, and we were able to drive statistical significance in changing customer behavior. So that's maybe not precise enough, but yeah, at a high level, that's what we did. So I guess moving towards from something that was kind of invisible for the customer to something that was clearly communicated, and again, like we saw some great results there.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. What are some of the new innovations that you would like to try that you haven't been doing yet, but you imagine, over the next year, is just kind of something you've seen somewhere that you think could apply to your business?
So maybe it's going to be a cliche a little bit, but I definitely feel like artificial intelligence is coming our way very fast. And I think, I don't know exactly how it's going to necessarily apply to, to us and to Essence, but I definitely feel like we need to keep a close eye on that, because if we're late to the party, then I think the catch up is going to be very difficult. So that's definitely something that I think we need to be we need to be aware of, and we need to closely monitor the new I guess changes in the space to make sure that we're not missing the boat on that. So like similar to when online shopping started, there's a lot of companies that had a negative perspective on that and didn't feel like it was relevant to have an online presence. But now we're seeing that those companies have to, if they're still in business, they have to play catch up. So yeah, that's the main thing. I would say, like keeping a close eye on like what the latest development in terms of artificial intelligence.
Mm-hmm. And do you see that in terms of like artificial intelligence to be used for something like personalization in marketing, or do you see it also in fulfillment or, ordering and the whole experience?
I would say maybe it's large, but I would say like in all of those spaces, in marketing, in fulfillment, and then also in I guess supply. So like, what product should we get? What should be the optimal mix of products? All of that, I think, is going to be right now. There's still a lot of things that are manual, that we're constructing with the support of data science. But I think once we we advance in terms of artificial intelligence, then there's going to be a lot of progress.
That makes so much sense. I think it's really coming fast to the category, particularly in terms of data and big data, and where marketers can be, at the forefront and taking advantage, but also balancing it with, as you said before, the human touch, and where finding that right balance will be quite curious as we move into the future. I look forward to talking to you, a year from now, and seeing how things have evolved, and what you've learned, and what's going well, and what where you hope it will continue to drive.
Of course, yes, we can schedule already to put it in the calendar.
Exactly. I think our next panelists are up, so I will thank you so much again for joining us, Simon. It was lovely to have you, and I hope to see you back again.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you so much. So our next speakers today are Liz Cakel, who's head of content digital at Nestle, and Jesus Ramirez, who's the vice president of strategy at Tallwave, will be in conversation. Please join me in welcoming them both to the stage. Let's see. There we are. Hi, Liz.
Hey, great to see you.
Great to see you too. Hi, Jesus. Welcome.
Hi there. Good morning.
Good morning. I will hand it off to you two.
Awesome. Hey, Liz, how's it going?
Hey, Jesus. I'm excited to connect today.
Yeah, me too. All right, so let's get started. Maybe I'll just give a quick overview and introduction of myself, and then I'll hand it off to you to give an intro to yourself as well. All right, so excited to be here. My name is Jesus Ramirez. I'm a partner and VP of strategy at Tallwave. Tallwave is a customer experience design company. We partner with bold and ambitious brands to help them design and deliver incredible digital customer experiences. And so I'm excited. I'm here with Liz Caselli Michelle, the global head of content and digital at Nestle. And there's a lot to talk about. So let's get started. I thought a good place to start, Liz, might be just for you to tell the audience and share a little bit about your personal story, your journey, and what led you to where you are today. And maybe starting or somehow weaving in this story of the cocoa farms in West Africa, because I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. I usually can take for granted that in digital marketing events, I'll be the only agricultural economist. So that's usually like a fun twist to bring to the table. So I started my work in farmer-facing projects in East Africa and Central America, really focused on using communication tools with farmers to make food chains work better. And I loved that work. I still have a very special place in my heart for it. But a lot of what I was finding in public-private partnerships is I was seeing a lot of impact being driven on the private side, and that the communication need wasn't just with your farmers, it was actually getting better at communicating all the way through to your consumer. And so I changed gears and went on the road of consumer communication and how do we bring consumers closer to the journey that food goes on, and really cultivate better trust and passion for the food we're eating every day. So my first contact with Nestle was actually on a cocoa farm in Côte d'Ivoire, when I was with a public sector partner working with the World Cocoa Foundation. And at that time, I would have had no idea that I would end up here in Switzerland getting to tell the stories of those cocoa farmers every day. But it's been a really fun ride, and I think something really unique to bring as a marketer and a communicator to have had that on the ground piece. So it tends to surprise people, but I always try to convince them that agricultural economist and digital marketer are not as far apart as they seem.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating, especially when you start getting into storytelling, which we'll talk about, because I think there's many components of the story that you can tell, and having that background in the very beginning of the food journey is a really fascinating perspective. So That's awesome. So could you give us maybe a sense of what your role is? So I know I sort of listed your title, but I think it would be great to hear just sort of your perspective on your role and maybe a few things that you really love about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I lead digital and content, really focused on the Nestle master brand globally. So that's how we engage and produce content for our master brand channels, but also how we empower every country's local team to connect with their consumers and to tell really localized stories. So there is a really heavy focus on social impact, sustainability, purpose-driven storytelling, and kind of bringing the behind the scenes of where food is coming from through to the forefront. So I have a lot of passion for the work. I love food. Food is it's a really special industry to work in because it's so personal. People have such a connection to their own food journey and favorites, and it drives economies and it drives cultures. I feel like every time you land in a new place, the first thing you want to do is have the local food, and it's something really special that has that amount of connection. So I love being able to take the enthusiasm and nerdiness I feel for our food stories here, and really bring that into our consumer connections.
That's amazing. Yeah, no, that sounds, it's interesting how food is really at the center of every conversation.
More than ever.
Yeah, it's the thing that binds us all together, right? It brings us all together. Well, I think one thing I'd love to maybe get into right off the bat is the role that Nestle plays, the brand plays in the lives of consumers, of your consumers. And obviously there's a lot of brands that sit underneath the Nestle master brand, but I'd love to just understand, is there sort of a unifying purpose that all of your brands are sort of globally trying to play in the lives of consumers? And then what role does content and storytelling play in the relationship between the brands and consumers?
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a good question because it's such a huge and varied portfolio. I think there is a real temptation to go everywhere and be everything. But the thing that stuck out the most to me about Nestle when I first joined was for all of the size and scale, we're in more than 190 countries. It actually tends to function locally like a local food company, where the ingredients and farms are producing, where packaging is happening, how brands are marketed, tends to be really local to each country. Of course, there are some huge global brands like Nescafe that have these big footprints and this kind of unifying idea. But I think that really the special thing about the breadth of the Nestle portfolio is how much it's localized and personalized. Even a brand like Maggi, which is a huge global powerhouse, folks who grew up outside the US will be very familiar. It's something that looks totally different. In Cote d'Ivoire, it has more of a seafood base because you're right on the ocean and it's much more akin to the local diet. It looks totally different than what Maggi products would look like in India. So I think that kind of localized, personalized food connection is a big part of every product in the portfolio, no matter what market it lives in. I think the storytelling piece of that is the ability to kind of bring the human side through on that as well. Because like we've talked about before, as a CPG company, you don't always have that immediate connection with consumers at point of sale. You don't control their buying experience. That's going through our partners. So how do you create the connectivity back to your origin story and to that owned brand and owned property? I think comes a lot through where we have opportunities for storytelling and content. In my case, heavily in digital spaces, that's something we talk about even down to the package. How do we use the package to embrace more storytelling and origin stories of the product?
That's fascinating. One thing that just came to mind is, given that you're such a global brand, and I love this notion of empowering local teams to really drive localized stories, and really your role being more of an empowerer of those teams. What are some of the ways that you do that? I mean, I know that's a broad question, but like, what are some of the ways? Because I can imagine that's very challenging. One, because you're trying to drive consistency in what you're empowering them with, whether that be, standardized communications, storylines, whether it be assets, whether it be whatever it may be, like how do you manage that? How do you really provide and empower a distributed so many localized teams from your vantage point?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in giving a menu instead of a prescription. So our markets are really different. I'm coming to our Swiss headquarters from the U.S. market, which is Nestle's biggest market in the world. And that team, I'm biased, but that team's incredible. There's so much creative capability and kind of boundary pushing that happens on that team. But there are also teams that function maybe with one communications person, not just for digital, but for a master brand in general. It's hard to believe with such a big brand, but for some countries that can be the case. So I think it's a big mindset shift to think not one size fits all, not how do we make everywhere look like the content package the US has with the largest presence, but more how do we give a menu of kind of every scale of implementation. I think we try to bring consistency in how our values come to life. Like regeneration is a big focus for us in how we develop our supply chains, not just to have zero negative impact, but to actually have a long-term positive impact. And that's a story that can be told in every country, but it won't look the same in every country. So really being able to give the tools, it might be as tangible as like templates, but to encourage and support and kind of be a bat phone when there are challenges or concerns, no matter what scale an individual market is operating at.
Yeah, you have the bat light.
Yes.
So how do you, maybe piggybacking off of that, how do you manage what is consistent versus what is offloaded and each team has autonomy around? And how do you manage that? Meaning, I imagine that evolves over time. You're in constant dialogue with each of the markets, each of the teams. How do you determine as a team what needs to stay consistent, what needs to shift overall across all brands versus what is in really sort of the control and autonomy of each of the individual teams?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the classic tools like the Nestle brand book and style guidelines stays the same. The nest is the nest everywhere you go. But I think that it's one of the things that we do to drive consistency in a more organic way, rather than prescriptive, also has a lot to do with really like shining a light on incredible work that's happening at the market level. So being able to take cool projects and employee spotlights and different ways of bringing the consumer closer to the farm or the package to see kind of the life cycle of sustainable packaging can go on, really being able to take up some of our favorite projects no matter where they're from and put a spotlight on them. And I've seen a lot of like stealing with pride, a lot of markets taking inspiration from one another and using a format that then they can localize. So one of our favorite kind of running formats in Nestle US, we called Nestle BFFs, and it was two best friends from within the company kind of like almost playing a dating game. And then we saw that format in our Southern Africa office. We saw it in the Caribbean, because that's sort of like a broader truth, that reality of like your work best friend and the things you go through together and the ways you support each other. So something like that, being able to take inspiration, it's still really localized because the people behind it are real. So when you can take inspiration from a format, but bring your own people and faces and voices to it, I think that that's a really authentic way to create some centralized tools, formats, options that can make it easier to implement, but ultimately it still comes back to the voices and the real people on the ground.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I'm also a big believer in that philosophy of rather than trying to enforce and dictate, really shining the light on things that work, because ultimately people just naturally gravitate to things that work, and they people gravitate to things that they feel are going to help them out. And if you're able to show what's working, what's having a positive impact, what's resonating with consumers, naturally people are going to gravitate towards that and going to want to adopt it for themselves. So it makes a lot of sense. So I'm curious in this role, obviously storytelling, we talked about this a bit. Storytelling is such a critical role for the brand. And what are the types of stories, either in the last year or year and a half, that you've tried to tell? So what are the types of stories that you've told, that you're wanting to tell, or perhaps even campaigns that you're proud of over the last the last year and a half?
Yeah, something I get really excited about is showing the teams that bring new product innovation to life. So something may show up on your shelf or in your Instagram feed that you're interested, you really want to try. But I think it's really compelling where you can see where that actually came from or the journeys that it's gone down. So Nestle has made a huge investment into innovating in plant-based foods. And there have been some really cool products coming out of that, especially the past year, across markets, across Switzerland, everywhere. And so seeing how scientists are actually like working with food to see how we can make something that a consumer is going to love with all plant-based ingredients. And how do you get that taste right and the texture right? How do you move into categories that have never been done that way before? Like Vuna, a plant-based tuna that the team launched last year, and hearing about how they worked on it every day, what their challenges were, the taste testing with your cynical 15-year-old daughter. I think like the hearing how the teams go on those journeys together has been an area that I have a lot of passion for, and is a story I love to tell that can kind of take a product and a label that could sit there and just make it feel more connective and make it feel like you as the consumer are also part of that journey. And not every new product is going to succeed. Some are going to flop, some are going to grow. So you're sort of part of this special moment of something being in trial, and where is it going to go from here, and how's it going to develop further? So like that's a story that I particularly really love. I also, like we've talked about, just love my like fellow food science nerds, and there's so much to like geek out on and see what's happening in the development kitchens and how you experiment there. So that's a favorite. And I think another thing that we've talked about is really the role of content in prioritizing value for your reader and your consumer. So I think about a company like ours. We're the biggest coffee company in the world, and you can hear directly from head roasters how they're innovating in coffee, or what you can do with your own coffee to make it more to your taste, or introduce it into your cocktails, or hear from our Purina veterinarians. If your dog's getting weird and picky about food, what does that mean? What should you do about it? So that really like actionable, tangible value is another area that I think is a area to drive in storytelling, and in hearing those personal experiences of experts that you can connect to and you can apply, because there's such a shortage of time, there's such a shortage of attention. I think I'm the most proud of content or a story that really sticks for somebody because they're thinking of it when they take that product off the shelf, or the next time they're like, this is my life, slowly like closing the door and hoping the dog doesn't get the separation anxiety barking. Like those moments where you're thinking back to being able to connect to like one of the leading vets in the world, that's a very cool like content outcome to have. And that's something that we think and hope is really like investing in trust. It's not necessarily about driving that product, but really understanding who's behind what's getting made and being able to build your trust in Nestle, no matter what the product is.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I like that as an overarching theme, just this notion of investing in trust, because I think that encompasses both what you were talking about in terms of like the science behind some of the foods, the development process, the innovation process, as well as leveraging your experts within your network to really build trust and add credibility, and really just ultimately provide value to consumers.
Absolutely.
The other thing that I find really interesting is just the storytelling, and the way you're describing it just adds a lot of character and dimension to the products ultimately, because I think it's like, there's so much backstory, And I think what we've seen is that there's a almost a pent up demand. I don't know if it's a pent up demand or if it's just a demand that has emerged, where people want to know. People like are curious about those things. They're asking those questions for the very first time. Everything from sustainable farming to to local sort of food supplies, and people are interested. And so I love that you're bringing that to the forefront.
Yeah, I think the human face of that is a big part of it. And I think we're coming away from an era where there was some kind of fear about acknowledging like humans are behind this, and
Yeah.
that not every product is going to succeed. There was always an instinct of like, well, let's wait and see if it's successful, and let's wait like so long it's not interesting anymore. And now I think there's much more of an appetite to say, let's tell this story while it's happening. And it's okay to say, that didn't end up where we thought it did, that a product totally flopped on the market. But we in the US had examples where like a product release totally flopped, but it ended up being the impetus for a different product development a year later that became huge. That's actually the origin story of Coffee Mate Natural Bliss. It started as a product that like really didn't do well in the market, but it gave insight, and the development process open new questions, and it became something super impactful in its market. So I think that there's a little bit more acknowledgement that it's okay for successes to not be linear, and it's okay to start to open the door that not everything was perfect and omnipotent, that we learn as we go, and that's something we can be a little more transparent and authentic about.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It's introducing vulnerability into the process, because it is very vulnerable. I mean, I think that's part of one of the big reasons that people don't do it, right? People don't want to show their failures in front of a global stage. And I'm I want to ask this question, and I'll bring it back, but how do you as a team make those decisions? Because obviously I imagine when you have this idea of wanting to explore and tell stories, and even if it may set you up where it shows something that didn't work, that's a very vulnerable. And I imagine there's a lot of conversations internally around like the risk of this, and how do we manage this, or how far do we want to go out? Like, are there any practical advice or thoughts for others who are considering this route? Because I know that doesn't happen in isolation, and I know it's a very complex decision to go down that route.
Yeah, it definitely is the product of a lot of conversations. And I think as a content team, we often need to choose not taking the easy path, and not for removing something when it's first requested, but instead of saying like, oh, sure, we'll take out that anecdote, saying, okay, what's the real concern here? Let's talk about it. Can we try this? Can we try that? And it really is, you have, just as professionals day to day, you have like a ton of time pressure. You're multitasking all over the place. There are times that you're really tempted to be like, oh, I'll just say yes. But I think when you start to get a team culture, and also like a broader company culture of, believing in failing forward, believing in smart risks, wanting to move towards more authenticity and more transparency. When you're talking about those things a lot, and your leaders are talking about those things conceptually, you can almost like see folks in the struggle. And often like marketers, like having to go into a meeting with a lawyer is like not always a good thing as a marketer. I actually feel like our legal team is amazing, and will completely differentiate between, okay, what makes us uncomfortable versus what is an actual intellectual property risk. And so let's start to go into some of those spaces that make us uncomfortable. And they know that we're engaging them in the process, so they don't need to be afraid that we're going to go rogue. So I would say, like, whether that, at whatever your size of organization is, that might be your legal team, your development team, whoever it is that you're partnering with on that creation, or who's involved in kind of that risk assessment, it is really engagement through the process, as opposed to like trying to slip things by, because you don't want them to feel like they have to police you. You want them to feel like a partner, and you're trying to get to the same objective. and getting that conceptual alignment early on, that's like, we do want to do things that make us more uncomfortable. We're both in for that. Now let's talk about where that right line is and just calibrate from there. And there definitely are stories we thought were super compelling and wanted to tell and did not work out. Like, it's not 100% hit rate. But I think investing in those relationships has allowed the content teams and the communication teams to bring more and more openness and candor behind the scenes. It's not a super clear cut path, but it's one that when we got alignment that like, this is important to us as a broader direction, it changes the framing of every conversation. So it's no longer push pull, it's all moving in the same direction and kind of like calibrating as you go.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's some really, so I knew it was a bit of a complex question, but I think there is some really interesting nuggets that you just shared. One being that driving that alignment early on, and rather than thinking about a team that's policing you, you're really everybody's really trying to manage risks, but at the same time really trying to push the envelope. And if there's a cultural buy-in to that's an easier conversation from the beginning. But I think the one thing you also mentioned was finding that nuanced, I'm paraphrasing here, but the line of differentiation between something that's uncomfortable versus something that is truly a risk exposure, I think is really important. And you probably won't get to that unless you bring your partners in early on in the process and are engaging them in that conversation and trying to collectively identify what that line is, right? And that doesn't happen by accident.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like maybe I've ratted myself out as the corporate person today by talking about legal, but it really is like, and it at the point where you have incredible partners internally, I think it's often like a scapegoat or a complaint, but when you build that relationship, it's incredible insight. And I can say truthfully, just in the global role after being in the US, working with the legal team here, within my first 6 weeks, I've had legal pushing me to go farther in a piece of content because they thought we could be braver. So it's a really good time of us all like knowing what the goal is, knowing what we want our brand to represent, and working towards that together and pushing each other in whichever direction you need to be pushed. And maybe usually we need to be a little reined in, but on times where we need a push forward, they'll give us that too.
Yeah. And you mentioned legal, but I think this applies to any partner team, right? Because it also applies from like development as well. Like you want your development partners to be pushing the envelope and also identifying risk for you at the same time, and really helping to identify what that balance and trade-off is. And so I think it's, legal is the obvious one, but I also think it applies to all your other partners that are helping execute.
Yeah, absolutely true. And you'll find it also has so much to do with like personal level of comfort when we're spotlighting experts who are not in communications or have not had that be part of their job before. And it's really our job to make them comfortable. And we looked for a lot of trust in that relationship too, because if you're putting your name and your voice and your kind of personal story out there as an expert, you're making yourself quite vulnerable as well. So I really want those partners to be able to trust us and know that we are going to do right by what they tell us and what's important to them. So it's absolutely true across the organization, wherever we're partnering to bring those stories out.
Yeah, well, that's great. One of the things that we touched on, and I want to go into here is talking about some of the evolutions or innovations in your content over the past 18 months. And one of the things that I found interesting was, we've kind of hit on it already a little bit, which is bringing experts to the forefront. And that can be everything from veterinarians to, in one case, the example you gave me was Coach Ruth. And so,
the cookie coach.
The cookie coach, which is an awesome title, by the way. So I'm wondering if you could maybe tell a little bit tell that story, but within the larger context of how you evolved as an organization and how you started kind of changing and evolving quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think our focus on how are we adding value is something that spans teams and is something that was at the beginning of COVID was all the more like rubber hitting the road, is that we need to be here for folks. We need to be here for our consumers and our communities. And that looks different in different ways. But if they're going to spend time with us, we really need to add value back. And so the Cookie Coach was a product from our baking team and digital innovation team in the US, where as a new baker, which a lot of people were experimenting for the first time with, you could go onto the Toll House website and choose Cookie Coach. You can still go and play with Cookie Coach, and get the original Toll House recipe for baking with Toll House morsels, chocolate chip cookies. But you could also customize if you had allergies, if you were changing the size of the batch, if you wanted to use different ingredients, you could tell those things to Cookie Coach and get a customized recipe. And then, as is often the case with me, if you're finding, I thought I followed the directions, but these are all coming out like hockey pucks, you had like this troubleshooting process with Cookie Coach that's like, cookies are too hard, cookies are not done, cookies are burning way too fast, and get these troubleshooting pieces of guidance back. And that was very close to my personal consumer experience, which they don't all have to be, but I think you could really see this is a way that's not just delivering like bake with our product, but is really adding value as consumers go on that journey from all different places. And at a time where maybe you can't be baking with your aunt or your mom or your friend who's going to like troubleshoot you in real time, a way of kind of bringing something else into that moment to make it fun and accessible and kind of break down that barrier to entry. So that was one of my favorite innovations that came out of the team. And she's named Ruth after Ruth Wakefield, who was the inventor of the first Toll House chocolate chip cookie. And so that was a really great combination of the digital innovation to bring her to life in a really human way and really equip her to interact with consumers. Plus being able to really like meet that consumer need, put that first, and better understand then based on what consumers are asking and interacting on, what are the roadblocks that they're hitting becoming new bakers and what else could make it easier for them based on having a better understanding of what they're
I think we might have
I've got you back. Did I?
Yeah, I think I've lost a little bit of connection. I'm not sure if that was on my end or, but yeah, I think where I left off was you're talking about just the Cookie Coach was really just a combination of the digital innovation team, combination of like really rich content, and then leveraging insights that you're getting from the way that consumers are interacting with it to make perhaps like content changes, product changes. So I think that's really fascinating.
Yeah, that's a favorite of mine. And she is just super fun to experiment with, especially if you have perhaps had baking disasters of your own, as I have.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure everybody's had baking disasters over the last year. Like they make, making sourdough bread seems so easy, but it turns out.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I am not too good to just buy dough, pre-made dough, but here and there, I'll experiment with the morsels and homemade as well.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. So so obviously over the last, I think we probably don't need to spend a lot of time over the last 18 months, but I do think it's really interesting. And you talked about how your content has evolved and how just your approach to innovation has evolved. How do you see content and the types of stories you tell and the types of innovations you pursue? How do you see those evolving as we enter into this new stage? Mm-hmm. So what are you keeping an eye on? What are you sort of trying to push forward? How are you just approaching this next phase?
Yeah, I think that the thing that I focused on the most was understanding need states. And so I think the area of technology that I'm the most excited to see kind of continue to move in innovation is personalization, but really personalization by need state. And being able to drive at what's really delivering on the thing that's keeping you up at night right now, which frankly very often could be food or pet related. Those are two that come up quite a lot. And another kind of amazing project that I love within Nestle is called Dottie, which is under the Gerber brand. And that's opportunity for new parents to ask questions, not just about Gerber products, but about anything, to licensed nurses and have that like 24-hour helpline. So thinking about the need state and really delivering and being there in those phases where you're needed the most and you can really add value irrespective of the level of involvement of the product, I think is really exciting, and is where a lot of digital marketing innovation can really grow and maximize the ability to have the right value solution from a content perspective at the right time for your audience.
Yeah, and there's so much to dig into there, because I think it's in essence it's expanding the role that your brand plays in the lives of your consumers or your customers, right? Because I love that example of Gerber and just being a resource, being someone who's there at all times to just answer questions, and that may have nothing to do with the product itself, but it's really just expanding the role. And so how do you bridge that gap? So in this last period, these last 18 months, you've had the ability to expand. The brands have had the ability to expand what their purpose and role is within the lives of their consumers. Going forward, as things start to maybe revert back to some semblance of normal, and people start to maybe think about their old behaviors and old ways of getting this information that wasn't accessible and that brands played a larger role in, how do you maintain some of those relationships, maintain some of that that value that you're providing, or that you were able to provide in the last 18 months?
Yeah, I think a big part of that is doing right by every opportunity that you're given. Because in some of those cases, especially where we're really leaning on digital innovation and development, you're kind of making that opportunity and making that connection. But the other thing I would say not to forget as marketers or brand innovators is that like customer service role. And as CPG, it's not exactly like every order touch point. But I think a huge thing that was a learning for me in the US business was just really understanding our consumer services colleagues and the incredible value of what they're doing. One thing when we were really digging into social impact brands and what do consumers think are brands that have a really strong positive impact on the world, their first answer was actually not sustainable sourcing or giving back to the community. The first answer was, I had a great personal experience when I was troubleshooting with a brand or company, which isn't what we would think of as social impact. But if you can't deliver there, you're really not going to have the trust to deliver in any other space either. So being able to have a smooth, easy, personalized, caring, like empathetic consumer services experience is one of the areas that I really loved seeing grow within Nestle, because I think within marketing teams that can often get kind of written off as like the negative, like we don't want to deal with complaints, but it's whether it's positive or negative, it might be, I really miss this flavor that got discontinued. It might be, I had an issue with my package and I'm annoyed. Being able to show up and go like above and beyond in those moments, I think is really critical for having a consumer relationship. And I would say one major learning is to take every one of those contact opportunities really seriously and treat it with value, and build your systems to do that too. So I'll always shout out that team in the DC office, because I think it could be forgotten about when we talked about like these grand marketing strategies, but ultimately is one of the things that brought to life consumer value more than any other touch point that we had.
Wow. Yeah, no, it's interesting. You wouldn't immediately make that connection, but once the way you're describing it makes a lot of sense, because it's like it's really credibility. Your credibility on your ability as a brand to deliver on these really ambitious and purpose-driven mission. But if you can't even provide a good interaction with me as a consumer, then that sort of supersedes anything else, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing. So I think that's a really interesting point of really maximizing those touch points that you're receiving from consumers as they're reaching out to you. What are some of the ways, and I know this has been, it's always been important for brands, but now more than ever, just given the evolving needs and changes in expectations and pain points and friction points that consumers are having along the way, understanding that in real time is really, really critical. And that those reactive channels are important, but I know that a lot of brands have started thinking about how do we be more proactive in how we engage our customers, and how do we create more direct connections. And I know as a CPG brand, that isn't always the easiest for you, just given that you have to work through partners and you're not always there at the point of sale. So what are some of the ways that you're creating closer and more direct touch points with consumers and pulling in insights to make decisions on content and all these other things?
Yeah, I'm a huge believer in the role that insights should play in some of these like fundamental conversations, in addition to when you're developing products. So I think getting rapid insights is super critical. It can't be just on the journey of product development, 6 months, 9 months. It's got to be like that rapid survey, rapid touch point pulse. No matter what the decision being taken is, the message is being able to really create that space to listen to your consumers and have it be an active part of the decision as opposed to retrospective. So that's I'm a big believer in pulling that into parts of the business that maybe didn't anchor heavily on insights before, in addition to the places that it's always really lived, like development.
Yeah, and are there any sort of changes specifically that you've made? So I know one of the things that your team has started to do is started just really pulling in these quick hit sort of real time surveys and research. And I know going from, and again, this is something that a lot of organizations are going through, is looking at this retrospective 6 months where it's more of a longitudinal study, to getting in the moment insights is very, very different. What are some of the things that you've done that have been successful, and perhaps some of the things that you've tried that haven't been successful?
Yeah, this is one of my favorites. So it's a great kind of place to leave off. But talent is also a really relevant audience to us in addition to consumers. I think that the way we prioritize and engage with talent is really important. And so that's also somewhere we've increased our use of insights. So the world for talent and working has changed so much. And so being able to really track over time and get quick feedback on what's important to talent in their work environment that's maybe different than a year and a half ago, which is a lot, has really changed, and what's a priority has been really important. And that goes from just in the abstract, what's important to you, what are you looking for, rank these things and seeing how that moves, but also really testing the things that we're doing specifically in those messages to understand what makes people want to come work here. And I think one of the big surprises for the team was when we looked at a ton of different things that we were doing as an employer, for both men and women in the talent pool. One of the most impactful things in wanting to come work at Nestle was our announcement of one-to-one gender pay equity, and being able and willing to make that information public. And I think people did not anticipate that it would have that kind of impact. And internally, it was almost something that was like, do we even really announce it? Don't people just assume and take this for granted? And the answer is no. Like, we as talent do not assume that we can take that for granted. So I think that having that information from Rapid Insights really changed the internal conversations to how can we do more of that? How can we drive more conversation in the space and bring the transparency that people are really craving here? And that's why last year we actually expanded our gender pay equity announcement to include racial pay equity for underrepresented minorities. And I don't think that that's something that would have happened without seeing the value and importance that the talent pool put in our research on gender pay equity, which was way beyond what people realized was the significance it would have. So questioning your assumptions and then being willing to like go deeper and think about how to build on that further matters, whether it's talent or consumers. But that's definitely one of the uses of insights that I'm the most proud of, because I thought it wasn't just positive for our employees and our talent pool, it actually continued to contribute to an industry-wide conversation about bringing more transparency to those conversations. So insights can do a lot. It can be a really important part of those discussions.
Yeah, no, I love the duality of it. I mean, I think you're gathering insights to drive a conversation internally, but then you're telling stories externally about some of that impact. And so there's a duality there that I think is really important and really highlights the brand and what you stand for. So I know that I need to do a time check here because I think I might be going over.
Diana, are you here to time check this?
I am here. We are here to wrap it up, but I just want to thank you both. It's a fascinating conversation. I love the story of Nestle taking such a stand internally about pay equity, and then how you're continuing it in the D&I conversation, because obviously this is really important both to employees and also to consumers, because consumers want to support brands that are following their values and they have shared values with. Great conversation, Liz and Jesus. I just want to thank you both so much for being here today. Would love to have you both back. It's been really a pleasure. And I just want to say thanks to everyone who joined for our session today on digital innovation. We hope we will join Brand Innovators later today for our Future of Media Summit at 12 p.m. Eastern, just in about an hour and 15 minutes. We'll be joined by marketing leaders from Pepsi, Dunkin', Nancy Wine, Petco, and many more. So thank you for joining, everyone, and we hope to see you again soon.